I wanted to start off with a basic question of definition, and we can go around the room and sort of offer what the explanation of this term is. What is mansplaining? What is it? I hear it a lot.
What is mansplaining? God, it's my childhood. It's okay. So there. I mean, I think the best definition is just to sort of like point out an example. But like,
actually, let me explain what it is.
Right, thank you.
There it is, right there, folks. And scene.
That's mansplaining. Yeah, it's when
No, seriously, I know.
steps up to explain how the world works to a woman, and it could be anything from like how to open a jar of something to like how the Senate passes a bill.
So
right?
you can't just mansplaining is not just with respect to women's issues. It's like anything in the world.
In my opinion,
I explain
it's really anything.
I would say it's also when the woman most likely knows the same amount, if not more, information about the subject.
Okay.
So the man just thinks, like I picture like some schmo just talking to a woman who's maybe like a math professor trying to explain. She's like starting to explain how like a theorem works, and he'll be like, "Hold, let me just. You know how it works? You take two, and you take two, and you add them together, and it's like." This is like Joe Schmo on the street talking to like a math professor who's like looking at him like, really? Really?
Yes.
That's mansplaining.
I think you get a lot of mansplaining in the house.
I get a lot of mansplaining in my 63 years. I think that if there is a difference between how a man sees it and a woman sees it, then it's a pathological certainty on the man's part that he's right.
Oh, come on.
I
knew I knew I was going to have one reaction like that in this panel. I didn't realize it was going to happen.
I realized it was going to be the man. You saw it that way.
Your face is red already.
I also think it involves some element of condescension.
Okay.
So I'm going to explain this to you, and it's an issue that the woman generally knows better than the man, but the man is going to say, you know what, I'm going to explain this in simple terms to you.
Okay. What's that? I mean, you gave a theoretical example, but is there a good real life example of this?
God, I wish I could.
Have you ever been mansplained to?
I mean, yes, of course. But I do agree that it becomes mansplaining when there is an assumption that the person who's being explained the thing to doesn't really get it or doesn't have the capacity to understand it the way he does, right? I feel like my first two years working, I was never working on the Hill, but I did a lot of lobbying. I'd say for the first 2 years, every other day, someone would explain to me how you influence a member of Congress and how you count votes. Like, over and over and over again. It could have been a member of Congress, it could have been a chief of staff, it could have been it was
This
unbelievable.
must be Congress is just a male-dominated institution. This must be like your day.
A better example of that, and every woman who's ever been in politics on any level, whether it's the school board or in the Senate, understands that you can come up with an idea as a woman, you can explain it, there'll be total silence in the room. And then some man, 5 seconds later, will reiterate word for word what you've said, and everybody will say, "Oh, what a great idea that is! Oh, let's come together around that idea." That's mansplaining.
Yeah.
Do you feel like a lot of ideas you originate?
Absolutely.
Someone takes credit for?
All the time.
I called a flack one time, a communications person for a senator, and he was a man, and he had been communications director for like 20 years, a long time. And I remember telling him about the story I was going to write, and he was like, "Sweetheart." He was like, "Sweetheart."
Oh, no.
He's like, you and I both know that there's no story here. I was like, well, actually there is a story, and I'm going to write it. He's like, honey, no, we both know.
That's not mansplaining. That's just straight up conversation sexism, right?
So whose office was that?
I don't know. We're on air here.
Exactly.
I'm not going to call them out for that.
Explaining.
Well,
Who was that?
Give her 2 more glasses of wine and then
All right.
ask her.
Come full circle.
I find it interesting. I'm sure it happens with groups of men as well, but I just find it interesting that like there is more often been the case that I've been in a room with a group of women where a male legislator will come in and just explain to us why this is in our best interest instead of actively trying to negotiate. Like it's just a very different posture that I experience.
Why
And I've experienced that, particularly on the budget committee. You know, we have our Republican chair, Paul Ryan, who hails from Wisconsin, and other members really have a really well thought out reason that cutting programs that primarily benefit women, like SNAP, like turning Medicare into a voucher, cutting Medicaid, cutting Pell Grants,
Right.
you know, WIC, Women, Infant, Children programs, Head Start.
Yeah.
Cutting these programs is going to help us break a culture of dependency.
Right.
That somehow we're going to become more self-sufficient if they just snatch the safety net from up under us. And that somehow we are the drivers of the deficit. I mean, not these tax cuts to the wealthiest people.
Right.
Not the spending that we do through tax expenditures, through the tax code, to corporations rewarding them for moving offshore. No, it's that suckling babe that gets WIC.
Wait, so you
That
think
that
suckling
that
babe.
2-month-old baby
Right.
that is caught up in a cycle of dependency.
So wait, hold on. Look. So that's a form of mansplaining?
Yes.
Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
Notorious are.
Glorious.
Is there like
Can
a
we cheers?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't have any.
Oh,
Have some wine.
some.
Can't-
We gotta
can't
get you
toast
some
it
more
in a
wine.
glass.
Manischewitz.
We'll
I
retoast.
just had a tad of it. Okay.
I'm not sure. I'm not toasting. I'm
Cheers.
maintaining my objectivity on
Oh,
this
yeah,
one.
you are.
I mean, now that's what you call a bitch.
Oh!
Being in total control of herself.
Love it.
I love it.
Stand on my
For
notes, Marty.
himself.
For himself.
B-I-T-C-H.
Yeah, right. Being in total control of herself. I mean,
Gotcha.
she knows what she brings to the table, her value.
Well, my question was this. Is there a bigger badass in women's issues right now than the Notorious?
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah, do you want
Is
to flip
there
the table?
a bigger badass on anything right now? Why are you
Yeah.
making it about women's issues?
Well, I think in particular she's on women's issues, but in terms of bigger badasses, I don't know, I'm pretty good.
The things that I've seen her be
I mean, I'm up there, right? This show's amazing.
No, you're
things
totally top
that
5.
I've seen Justice Bader Ginsburg go to town on are
We're talking about her like she's a rap star.
are
right?
family issues.
Yeah.
They're not women's issues. And that's what people forget. Contraception is something often used by couples. Hobby Lobby isn't just the women that work there that are punished by the Supreme Court ruling. Men whose partners are covered are punished by that
Not
ruling.
following
Takes two to tango, Sam.
Here,
Explain this.
let me break it down for
No, I'm
you.
just joking around.
Contraception is a women's issue till we don't get any, and you got to wear a condom every
Well,
day.
why don't you? I'm not advocating this. I'm not advocating that. I mean, what's your perception of the role she's playing right now?
Well, she's an octogenarian who is in command of her senses. She's a lifetime appointment. She is standing her ground, if I can borrow that term, in terms of not being pressured to resign. And I think that she made the point. She's showing that she's present to say that no one else is going to be confirmed, and if they were, they'd have to be milquetoast as compared to who I am.
It's true.
That I'm willing to roll the dice to see whether or not we can get another Congress, another president, and look forward to better times. She's forward thinking, and she has made, I agree with you, Ilyse, she's made such a contribution.
And everyone here thinks that she should stay.
I think it's a.
Aren't you a little bit nervous?
No, because I think what
Really?
everyone is saying is we don't trust the candidates, the organizers, the next leaders we have coming up to do their job sufficiently. So, hey, one of our most significant leaders and trusted arbiters of the Constitution should move out of the way because nobody else can do their job.
Yeah, but let's be frank about it.
You're saying nobody else
No,
can
yeah,
do
let's
their
be
job.
frank about it.
What if she were to die?
What if you were to die tomorrow?
Agreed.
The world would be worse off. But I mean, I'm not a Supreme Court justice. You know that there are stakes.
She's
here.
also not sick.
She's not
as
any.
far as I
Yeah,
know. Like,
She's had
She's
issues.
fine.
She's had health issues in the past.
but
so is Hillary Clinton.
I mean, a lot of people, I mean, no, that's true. A lot of people have health issues. But, you know, I mean, I don't
So
want
did Dick Cheney when he became vice president.
And that was a big problem. I'm assuming MoveOn.org, Ilyse Hogue would have said you cannot have that man as vice president because of his
Not
heart.
for his health issues.
For other reasons.
Plenty of
For,
other
for
reasons.
not having a heart.
Fine,
Yes.
fair. However, the fact remains that she could stay on. A Republican obviously could get elected president, and she could die. And that's just a fact. I mean, there's no way around it.
And she could resign, and Barack Obama will not be able to replace her because the filibuster would be in place for Supreme Court justices.
True.
Let's also be clear. This is really critical, and people miss this. We have the majority in the Senate as Democrats. We only have 43 solid pro-choice senators.
And you know, Sam,
Yes.
when you get old, there's always, you know, there's always menopause. You realize. So I just tell all you young women out there, just hold on. There's menopause. Don't worry about birth control.
This is a drinking and talking first.
It's only 30 years. It's only 30 years. You have to try not to get pregnant.
All right, listen, this is sage advice here. We're changing lives on this show. I wanted to move to another topic involving her, which is her book, saying that she was harassed, essentially. No, seriously, harassed by a senator
and congressman.
and a congressman while in the gym. And they have reported who the senator was, the late Senator Inouye. But you know, the biggest debate was whether or not she should have had to name names. And I have to admit, I'm a little bit torn on this. And I've had women in my life say that they thought she should have named names. That you can only change the culture if you shame the people. Now you think differently.
I think that the reason that women don't come forward when they have been sexually assaulted, abused, harassed, is because the fear of these kinds of recriminations. I mean, people's first assault was on her.
Right.
Prove that it's true. Prove that you're right. I mean, maybe you're lying. Name names. Okay, why don't you come forward? And there was so much focus on her versus supporting her through what could have been, apparently it was not, but what could have, under other circumstances, been a very stressful event. And it's very safe to say nothing. And I tell you, abusers rely on silence. That's how serial rapists, serial perpetrators, batterers thrive and survive, is by the silence that they can depend upon.
You agree with that?
Oh, well, I usually agree with everything Congresswoman Moore says, but I agree that it is really easy to make this all about Senator Gillibrand and what she did or didn't do, and that negates the sort of systemic impact of what was going on. I mean, why wasn't anyone saying, why didn't any of the male senators who witnessed this or overheard it or engaged in conversations that Senator Gillibrand wasn't around for, why don't they name names? That changes the entire dynamic of what's going on. It's not just one woman against one man, or in this case, one woman against 65 men.
Right.
It becomes about men demonstrating their lack of tolerance for that kind of behavior by them being the ones to name names and hold each other accountable.
Well,
I don't disagree with that.
Well, let's play devil's advocate. I mean, wouldn't it? I mean, let's say she had named your name in the book. Wouldn't that have prompted much more introspection and discussion about the way Congress acts, the way the men in Congress acts, if they actually knew who the person was who did all this?
No, I think it would make it a lot easier for the men who weren't named to come out and say, well, what a jerk. Why would he say something like that? I condemn his action, when it's so widespread in Congress. I've interviewed Leader Pelosi before, and she has said the same thing to me twice. Like, she says it's a men's club in there. She said, you wouldn't imagine the things I've heard said to me in the halls of Congress. And so
you're saying it would be too easy to scapegoat one person?
Right, exactly. I think the point is that it's not about one person. It's about a culture. It's a cultural problem, not only in Congress, but in a lot of women's workplaces. And I think that was the point that Senator Gillibrand was trying to make.
I also think it's fundamentally problematic to expect one individual to play all of the different roles that are expected of women when they are in the minority in any situation. Senator Gillibrand relies on enormous numbers of relationships to push through incredibly important policy that does impact all sorts of women and families. So to expect her to maintain those relationships, be a leader, be a whistleblower. No one person can do all of those things effectively, and we rely on her to be an effective senator to create sweeping change for all
but
Americans.
it's like, and I'm really glad she actually wrote about it. Like, it would have been really sad had she not had, and she felt like she couldn't even write about it. So let's establish that. Part of me wanted her to go the full distance. I mean, part of me wanted to find out who it was so that we can, confront the person for his actions. Now, it happens to be someone who's dead, unfortunately, but,
Well, there were multiple people.
Exactly. Well, then
You're looking for kind of an easier way out than actually exists.
let me explain this to you, okay? Let me explain how this works. I might as well ask, have you guys encountered, variations of this stuff in Congress?
Well, people commenting on whether you were attracted.
No, like the stuff that, just like the
Have
basic
you experienced
blatant...
sexism directly in Congress?
And people don't even construe it that way.
Just throw it out there.
I'm thinking 1988. I'm 38 years old. I'm going door to door, campaigning for votes, talking to potential constituents in a three-way primary, running against two men, and people saying to me, "Oh, sweetie, you sound so good. You're educated. You've got experience. You care about all the policies and the issues that I care about. But who's going to take care of your kids while you're up there in Madison?" I think sometimes people do it very innocently, and like you said, like it's been said here at this table before. I mean, I do think it's incumbent upon us to make sure that everybody becomes a stakeholder in leveling the playing field. I mean, my response to those people was, I don't have the option not to work.
Yeah.
I have to earn money to take care of these kids. And I would like to earn the money by serving you in this way. It's not like I'm just going to go home and do dishes and cook if I don't get this job. But they really had to wrestle with that. I mean, she sounds good, but who's going to take care of her kids?
The guy running for governor in Massachusetts, Charlie Baker, who just, out of the blue,
Sweetheart.
yeah, calls his reporter sweetheart and is like great, minus the R's Boston accent. It's like, did that not cross his head that would be inappropriate? I was shocked that people would say something like that.
Shocked too. I haven't gotten it as a reporter from a congressman. I've gotten it from communications people that I've been talking to about stories, like people who work for a congressman, as I mentioned earlier, and back when I worked for a congressman, that happened to me as well. But actually, not as much as a
Not
reporter.
hanging out in bars enough.
Right. I think that's the problem.
That's your problem.
Maybe so.
Just gotta find the right bar.
Just go to any Democratic caucus meeting, really, or a sub-caucus
Oh,
meeting,
God.
where there's alcohol involved. Someone will touch you
Yeah.
Really?
in a weird way,
Aye.
and someone will tell you you're attractive.
I remember getting into a really terrible argument with a male colleague of mine, member of the same party, when he told me to stop being hysterical during a discussion. And I asked him to please stop referring to my womb, to my uterus, during the discussion, and made him retract statements about my being hysterical. I was winning the argument on a policy basis, and so he had to revert to saying I was hysterical.
Is this on the congressional record? I mean,
This was in the state legislature.
Okay. I want video.
But many people were there. It was not a one-on-one conversation. But for him to take that default position of is something that you said, that people only see you in the context of your being a female and don't think that you are sentient or intelligent.
I have a story from when I used to do corporate reform and corporate advocacy, and I showed up at a bank. I was negotiating around environment and human rights and their lending policy, and my counterpart at the bank, who I will not name, not the counterpart or the bank, was young, a young woman, and it was the two of us and a bunch of men on both sides of this negotiating table. And she comes up to me over by the coffee and she says, when they come in, tell them we were out partying really late last night. And I said, why? And she said, I'm exhausted. I can barely stand up because my kid was sick. But it will be better with my bosses if they think I was out whining and dining the people that we're negotiating with than I was up with my sick kid.
Wow.
And, you know, that I could have said to her, no, I won't do that. You need to stand up for yourself. I didn't do that, you know, because this is her job and this is her position and this is a culture that she needs to excel in for us all to get our policy initiatives.
It seems like like no other moment in my long life, in my decades covering this stuff, has the Democratic Party been so dependent on women, and single women almost, to really,
Not almost.
seriously,
Yeah.
to really come out in force and support the party. And, you know, I mean, I don't know if this is a historical anomaly or if this is going to be the future, but it does seem like the Democratic Party is trending very much towards the party of women. And I don't know if that's something that you've noticed, if it's something that's been, you know, conveyed to you in strategy sessions.
Well,
but-
there's definitely a gender gap that Democrats need to exploit in terms of GOTV. I mean, women need to understand that we are at risk of just remaining barefoot and pregnant under this party's regimen. You know, it seems to me that, you know, as Republicans, as the base of the Republican Party shrinks further and further and further. I mean, I'm talking as a person whose grandmother was a Republican the day she died, but grandmother for whom I'm named as an African American. But as their prospects shrink, and as they continue to contract, the only thing that they can hold on to is white married women.
It's true.
And you know, if they lose white married women, they'll never be able to be a national party anymore. And you know, I just think when you look at them wanting to take birth control away from your girlfriend, Medicare, Medicaid, you're more dependent on. You're not going to get that football scholarship to Penn State. I'm telling you, it ain't going to happen. They want to say
who are
that.
you talking to?
I'm talking to women out there.
You're going direct to camera at this point. This is, this is not a campaign advertisement.
She's going for it.
I'm just saying, girlfriend, you've got to vote.
Who's the best man on women's issues?
The best?
The best, besides your husband.
You really have to
Besides
pick
the
one.
president.
No, besides her husband.
Oh.
Screw the president.
Elected?
Yeah, elected official.
I
Who's your
mean,
favorite?
there are so many.
I know it's
in-
tough to choose one.
there
but
are so
this
many
is the
in
tough questions I
federal.
ask here.
in the federal Congress right now that I'm not going to pick one of them because
come on.
that would be too hard. Brian Sims in the Pennsylvania House has just been
Lawmaker.
phenomenal on being an unabashed feminist from the time he came into office, and I think he's a real rising
cool.
star. This cycle, people better get out and vote for Udall in Colorado and Begich in Alaska, and there are lots more. Michaud, who's
You
going
can't
to be
name
the.
4. I asked for 1.
All right. Well, I got 4 in.
You got 4 in.
Shaunna.
Who's your favorite male on these issues?
Come back to me.
Okay.
I like Joe Biden.
Oh,
There you go,
yeah.
that's
Uncle
good.
I can only name one
Uncle
person.
Joe.
Joe
That's good.
Biden.
He is so passionate in his
He
speeches.
is, and he's, you know, it's not a new thing. Before it was even popular, he was a feminist. Maybe that's because he had to raise his kids by himself.
Question: if Joe runs against
He had to
Hillary,
cook dinner.
Yeah, no, he had an incredible personal story that obviously educated his perspective on this stuff. So that's definitely true. Who would you put up there?
I'm sure there's a lot of men who are good. I'm just like, I have a really hard time.
For the record, for the record,
I just like
What
don't
about
care.
Tonka, he always shows up with all women all the time.
Really?
Women lead. Yeah, Tonka.
okay,
This
Tonka.
week,
Cool.
this week, Patrick Leahy for saying that Michael Boggs does not have the votes to become
Oh, that's
a
good.
federal
I like
judge.
that one. I'll go with Leahy
I'm
for that reason.
surprised that none of you named me.
You're not
Oh,
elected.
well, that was
I
just
said in
assumed.
Washington. In Washington.
for the
Sam,
record, I
that
just
was-
want to note that Sam mansplains in the office constantly.
That's not true.
I saw that on Instagram.
That is, what did you see on
true.
Instagram?
I mean, I don't know her personally. I wish I did, but I sense a
Ruth,
level.
if you're watching.
Yes.
Call
Two.
Ilyse.
Hey, girl.